One thing that I was always aware of, but never truly realized until I made my timeline video, was the fact that Ninjago's timeline has so many holes in it. And I'm not saying that as a diss to the show, I'm just simply pointing out that over the years, the show has had multiple writers and it's had multiple different instances where they've had to simply change the lore basically just to fit in, and that is called a retcon. And Ninjago does have a lot of them, and it's not really something that gets talked about too much in a video. So I thought I would do a video talking about these retcons, or at least a few of them, and giving a somewhat explanation as to how they could have happened, because unfortunately they have to make sense in context of the universe. Because while we know simply put that certain things were taken out of the show or changed in the show to match up with what they wanted to do, unfortunately you also do need to explain why they happened in-universe. But like I said, that is going to be today's video, and let me know what you think of these retcons. Do you like them? Do you not? Do you prefer how they were? I do want to know what you guys think, because some of these topics are quite divisive. But other than that, let's talk about some Ninjago retcons. Now the first one, and in my opinion in the biggest one when it comes to Ninjago, is of course the case of Aijitsu and the elemental dragons. Now a lot of people like to cite Way of the Departed as the way of explaining both of them, but we know the Way of the Departed isn't completely canon to Ninjago. It has been on note that you can take parts of Way of the Departed and you can consider it the canon, but it's not made to be exclusively canon to the show. So when people do cite it, it doesn't outright explain it. But that's the thing, between Season 7 and Season 8, of course, the ninja no longer use the elemental dragons and Aijitsu at the same time. Now, Way of the Departed explains that Aijitsu is no longer used because the ninja realized that it called upon dark magic called Edo magic, and that is why they stopped using it, because essentially it was a bad thing. And the elemental dragons are no longer being used simply because the ninja became afraid once again, because they were afraid of not being able to find Wu, and after the events of the Oni trilogy, all of the ninja had fears that they simply weren't able to come over. But the thing is that explanation, to an extent, kind of doesn't make sense. Now I will say for the most part I am content with the explanation for Aijitsu. I do like to think that a dark Edo magic does actually explain it away, and well, it understands why the ninja would no longer use it, and it also explains why it's there in Prime Empire, and they didn't say it as a, ooh, we shouldn't have this kind of situation. But the elemental dragons, to an extent, doesn't make sense to me. Now, I will say, in terms of the elemental dragons, I do think saying that the ninja were afraid of not finding Wu is valid. But the fact then that the ninja after the fact have just new fears that they have buried deep down kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you consider what they are. Lloyd's fear of becoming his father may be amplified after the events of the Oni trilogy, but they ultimately should have always have been an aspect of him because he was still the Dark Lord for a time. Zane being worried that he's only a machine and doesn't have any emotion, again, is definitely something that wouldn't have just popped up overnight. It's actually something we see explored technically in Season 4, and that was not until he realized he was the titanium ninja, no longer the white ninja. But the thing is that Zane probably should have had this fear the whole time, so it's one of those ones where it probably should have existed. And Nia's fear of just being a human and not being special is also just a bit of a weird one, and probably one that should have been approached before now. Again, it's one of those ones where Nia always had something. Of course, she had Samurai X, and then she was the water ninja. But suddenly being like, oh no, she's afraid of not having the title, is a bit strange, considering that when her fear technically does come to light, she does just become Samurai X again. So again, it's one of those ones where it felt almost just placed in. So the whole idea that the ninja have fears that they need to get over still is just a bit of a weird one. It really is. And it's one that, to an extent, the ninja conquer. Like Nia, for example, she becomes Samurai X and she realizes that she doesn't have to be normal, and she finds a way to adapt. She doesn't use her elemental dragon after the fact. So it's one of those ones where it's like, well, these kind of arbitrary fears are put in place just to make sure the ninja never use them again. So yeah, it's just a weird one. But like I said, let me know what you think of this. But those are the two big ones, in my opinion, in terms of Ninjago retcons. And like I said, let me know what you do think of the two. But the next one actually does involve the golden weapons. And that is the idea that, initially speaking, the golden weapons were able to be used by anyone. But in Season 10, they kind of confirmed that the weapons have to be exclusive to the Elemental Master. As we know, in Season 1 and 2, we see Samakai use the weapons. I believe some of the Serpents even use the weapons, especially in the Legacy shorts. But people use the elemental weapons of Spinjitzu, so it's one of those things where it didn't have to be the Master of Fire using the Sword of Fire. So when then in Season 10 you have Nia claiming she can't use the Scythe because she's not the Master of Earth, that's a retcon. And that's the thing, I really don't like this, because in my opinion, it's one of those things where anyone should be able to use the weapons, but the Elemental Master should be the one that can really tap into them. So it's a case of, well, why don't they just have that? Have Nia use the Scythe of Quakes, just not to the extent that Cole can use them. It just doesn't really make sense. But like I said, it just eliminates the idea that anyone could technically pick up those weapons and use them. Because like I said, we do see them. But the only explanation I do have for this is the idea that when Kai reforged the weapons, they simply had different rules. But I just don't like that explanation. But unfortunately, it's the only one I can really think of, because the only difference between the original weapons and these ones is the fact that Kai made them. So I don't know if Kai remaking the weapons somehow changed the abilities of them, but it just doesn't really make any other sense apart from that. But like I said, I mean, the golden weapons have a different design as well, but that's also because of Kai. But again, why is it now that no one can use the weapon unless they're an Elemental Master? Although, keeping on track with the golden weapons, the Mega Weapon also did technically receive a retcon, because in Wrong Place, Wrong Time, by all accounts, the Mega Weapon was destroyed. And that's the thing, that was the intention of that episode. It was to destroy the Mega Weapon. But then you go into Season 3 and it's on a comet in the middle of space. And I think as well, on technicality, there are two sets of golden weapons in that big ball of gold. Because you can see all the elemental weapons of Spinjitzu, and extra. It's very strange. Also, massive nunchucks. But again, another retcon. They brought the golden weapons back when they were meant to be destroyed. And that was obviously so they could have the Golden Master. But it's just a weird one, and just one that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Why would the weapons not be destroyed? They should have been destroyed in that moment, but they're not. So again, just another strange one. And the fifth and the final one I'm going to go through for this video is the case of how the writers have handled flashbacks, or how the animators specifically have handled flashbacks when it comes to Ninjago. Because of course you had the redesigns in Season 8, and since then they kind of don't really know what they want to do, and I will show you why. Of course, in Season 8, you've got Jay's flashback, you've got Zane's flashback, and you've got Cole's flashback as to when they met Wu. And even though they've got the new designs, each of the ninja do adopt their previous looks for those flashbacks, which is very nice to see. But the problem is that then you get into more and more flashbacks when it comes to Ninjago, and they seem to just slowly but surely change the rules. I'd say especially when it became Wildbrain, who was the one animating, they seem to be more leaning towards using newer designs. But the main thing when it comes to this is the fact that for the most part, they do tend to use some variant of their previous design, and this exists up to the point of Dragon's Rising. Apart from one of them, because there is a flashback in Season 1 of Dragon's Rising where we see Lloyd training with Wu. And the thing is that this version of Lloyd is just the legacy young Lloyd, so he has the green eyes, he does have this right hairpiece, he has the legacy outfit on, but also he's not voiced by Gillian Michaels. And this is the problem. This, by all accounts, is a retcon. They've given Lloyd that deeper voice, or at least the non-Gillian Michaels voice, for when he was younger now, and also gave him the green eyes. So it's one of those things where, why is this the case? We know the out-of-universe reason is because that the Legacy minifigure, I believe, was still on shelves at the time. Because he came in the big Ninjago Garden set, I do believe he was still on the shelves, so I think they just wanted to advertise that minifigure. But in-universe, he now has his deeper voice and his green eyes at the time, where we know for a fact he didn't, up until the point of Dragon's Rising, because we constantly have flashbacks. well, we had a couple of flashbacks at the very least that shows he at the very least didn't have the green eyes. So why does he have them now in universe? Well, my only explanation is that to an extent, which we never got to see unfortunately, Lloyd was able to tap into a green-eyed or more powerful variant of him, because we know that is the green eyes. It was where Lloyd tapped into his power more. But where they have the green eyes in flashbacks, it's those brief moments where Lloyd is really in tune with his powers. And that's the only way I can really get away with it, because of course, from season 8 onwards, he permanently has it, but that's because he became more powerful. But before then, maybe he was able to tap into the green eyes, but purely when he was really in tune with his power. And when he's training with Wu, he most likely is. As for the deeper voice, I don't know. I truly do not know. There's no explanation for him having a different voice temporarily. The only way I really could try and give an explanation is if I try to claim that essentially when Lloyd was in the rain, it was lightning, it was a storm, he was speaking up and his voice just sounded sounded lower because, simply put, he was trying to be able to make sure Wu could hear him. But that's such a loose explanation. There is no explanation for the voice. And it is quite frustrating, I will say. But maybe he was speaking up. But those are the 5 retcons I wanted to talk about in this video. And just as a brief summary, because like I said, let me know which ones you do like and which ones you don't like. For the ones I do like, I like the fact they don't have air jitsu anymore. I love air jitsu, don't get me wrong, but it's one of those things where air jitsu can just get them out of problems that they could have much more creative ways of doing. So I can appreciate that. The elemental dragons, it can be unfortunate at times. I know a lot of people claim that, of course, season 9 would have been irrelevant if they could have elemental dragons, but I believe, I'm not going to say this with certainty, but I believe it is canon that the elemental dragons didn't have that ability to be able to travel through realms. But the elemental dragons, again, cause the ninja to have actual dragons, which is nice. I don't really like the golden weapons one, especially because I'm fairly certain you can see 2 sets of golden weapons in there. So it's a bit strange. And also, the idea that the elemental weapons of Spinjitzu can only be used by the elemental masters, I really don't like that, because it takes away from a lot of cool situations. And then finally, everything about that Lloyd flashback, I just don't like. I just really don't like it. They should have brought back Jillian Michael. They should have had a better design, especially with no green eyes. It just is a shame, because of course it was to sell the sets, but at the same time, they should have remained more accurate, because Dragon's Rise in Season 2 literally has a younger Kai and Nia in their actual design, which is really nice to see. But Lloyd is the only one that didn't get it, and it was a perfect opportunity to bring back Jillian Michaels. So it's just one of those things where it's just another unfortunate event. But like I said, let me know what you do think of these retcons, and let me know if you want to hear me talk about more. But that is about it for today, guys. Thank you for watching. Take care. Okay,